Massachusetts, 1847. Walk into any general store from Boston to Philadelphia and you'd find them. Small, chalky wafers stamped with love notes. Be mine. Kiss me. True love. They're called conversation hearts, and by the 1920s, one factory in Cambridge, Massachusetts, is producing over 8 billion of them. Not per decade, per year. The New England Confectionery Company, NECCO. At their peak, they're not just making candy. They're manufacturing 4 billion wafers annually, dominating 40% of America's wafer candy market, employing over 2,400 workers across a facility sprawling 820,000 square feet. Their candies are in every movie theater, every drugstore, every lunchbox from Maine to California. During World War II, the U.S. government orders millions of Necco wafers for soldiers' rations. They don't melt, they don't spoil, they're indestructible. Then something went catastrophically wrong. By 2018, those same factory floors sat empty. The machines that once produced 4 billion candies a year were auctioned off for pennies on the dollar. The company that survived the Civil War, 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and a century of changing tastes collapsed in less than 90 days. From $230 million in revenue to bankruptcy. From 171 years of continuous operation to liquidation. The iconic conversation hearts, America's Valentine's Day tradition, vanished from store shelves for the first time in over a century. This is the story of how America's oldest candy company rose from immigrant ambition, dominated an entire industry, and then destroyed itself through a toxic combination of negligence, greed, and catastrophic mismanagement. This isn't just about candy. This is about what happens when legacy becomes a liability, when tradition becomes an excuse for stagnation, and when the pursuit of profit poisons everything it touches, literally. Welcome inside the NECCO Factory, where America's sweetest empire was built, sustained for 171 years, and destroyed in 90 days. Boston, 1847. A 23-year-old English immigrant named Oliver Chase stands in a cramped apothecary shop on Winter Street, grinding lozenges by hand. He's been in America for 3 years. He doesn't have money. He doesn't have connections. What he has is a problem that's driving him insane. The problem is simple. Making lozenges sucks. Every single lozenge, those small medicinal wafers pharmacists sell to soothe sore throats, has to be rolled out by hand, cut individually, and stamped one at a time. It takes hours to make a few dozen. Oliver Chase is 23 years old, and he's already sick of it. His hands are cramped. His back aches. The work is tedious, repetitive, mind-numbing. And he absolutely knows, there has to be a better way. So, he starts tinkering. Late at night, after the shop closes, Oliver Chase is in the back room building something. Not a new medicine, a machine. He's obsessed with the idea of automating the entire process, rolling, cutting, and stamping lozenges with a single device. Most apothecaries would laugh at him. Making lozenges by hand is just how it's done. It's tradition. Oliver Chase doesn't care about tradition. In 1847, he completes his invention, the lozenge cutter. It's a hand-cranked machine with rollers that flatten dough, blades that cut it into uniform discs, and stamps that press designs into each piece. What used to take hours now takes minutes. What used to require skilled labor now requires one person and a handle. It works. Within weeks, Oliver Chase isn't just making lozenges faster than any apothecary in Boston. He's making them faster than anyone in America. Orders start pouring in. Pharmacists want his machine. Other confectioners want his lozenges. By 1850, Oliver realizes he's not in the pharmacy business anymore. He's in the candy business. Chase pivots immediately. He stops making medicinal lozenges and starts producing candy wafers, small, sweet discs flavored with peppermint, lemon, and wintergreen. They're cheap to make, easy to store, and they don't spoil. In an era before refrigeration, that's a game changer. But Oliver Chase isn't done innovating. In 1866, his brother Daniel joins the business. Daniel is a dreamer where Oliver is an engineer. Daniel sees potential beyond wafers. He invents a machine that can print words directly onto the candy using vegetable dye. Tiny messages, love notes, sayings. The conversation lozenge is born. At first, they're novelties, small candies with phrases like, "Married in white," "You have chosen right," or "How long shall I have to wait? Please be considerate." They're sold in pharmacies, general stores, and candy shops as Valentine's Day gifts. People love them. By 1901, Daniel refines the design into the iconic heart shape. Be mine. Kiss me. True love. The conversation heart becomes the defining product of Valentine's Day in America. Every February, demand explodes, and the Chase Brothers Company, now officially called the New England Confectionery Company, NECCO, is the only one making them. They don't just dominate a market, they create it. Boston, 1901. The merger happens fast. Oliver Chase's company is thriving, but it's not alone. Boston in the late 1800s is a confectionery hub. Dozens of small candy makers are competing for shelf space, fighting over suppliers, undercutting each other on price. It's chaos. And chaos is expensive. So, three companies, Chase and Company, Wright and Moody, and the Forbes Candy Company, decide to stop competing and start consolidating. The deal is clean. They pool resources, share factories, and combine distribution networks. On June 6, 1901, they officially become the New England Confectionery Company, NECCO. The timing couldn't be better. America is industrializing. Railroads connect every major city. Mass production is the future. And NECCO has the infrastructure, the machines, and the product line to dominate. By 1906, NECCO moves into a massive new facility in Cambridge, Massachusetts, a sprawling brick complex along the Charles River. The factory is 820,000 square feet. It employs over 1,000 workers. It operates 24 hours a day, 3 shifts, 7 days a week. At their peak, this factory produces 4 billion Necco Wafers annually. Think about that for a second. 4 billion wafers. That's 11 million wafers every single day. Over 450,000 wafers per hour. The machines never stop. The production line never pauses. NECCO doesn't just make candy. They manufacture it at a scale that rivals industrial giants. And it's not just wafers. NECCO produces conversation hearts, Mary Janes, squirrel nut zippers, Clark bars, candy buttons, and Sky bars. Walk into any theater, drugstore, or corner shop in America, and you'll find NECCO products. The brand is ubiquitous. During World War I, the U.S. military places massive orders for NECCO wafers. They're lightweight, they don't melt, they don't spoil. Soldiers carry them in rations across Europe. When World War II begins, the military orders even more. NECCO wafers become part of the war effort. By the 1940s, NECCO controls 40% of the wafer candy market in America. They're producing over 8 billion conversation hearts every year for Valentine's Day alone. The factory runs at full capacity for months leading up to February 14th. Workers pack hearts into boxes by the millions. Trucks carry them to every state in the Union. From Boston to Los Angeles, from Seattle to Miami, NECCO is king. Sales climb. Reputation builds. Decades pass. The factory along the Charles River becomes a Boston landmark. Tourists take photos. Locals brag about working there. NECCO isn't just a company, it's an institution. For over a century, everything works perfectly. Cambridge, 1963. NECCO is still thriving, but beneath the surface, something is shifting. The candy industry is changing fast. In the 1960s, American tastes are evolving. Consumers want chocolate, they want variety, they want innovation. Hershey's is releasing new products every year. Mars is dominating with M&Ms and Snickers. Reese's peanut butter cups are flying off shelves. Even smaller brands like Starburst and Skittles are capturing market share with bold flavors and aggressive marketing. And Necco? Necco is still making the same chalky wafers they've been making since 1847. Not exactly the same, there have been minor tweaks, new flavors, different packaging. But fundamentally, Necco is selling nostalgia, not innovation. Their strategy is simple. We've been around for 100 years, we'll be around for 100 more. For a while, it works. NECCO's brand recognition is unmatched. Their products are cheap, reliable, and widely distributed. Conversation Hearts remain the undisputed king of Valentine's Day candy. Every February, NECCO's production lines run at maximum capacity. Stores can't keep hearts in stock. But here's the problem. Necco is becoming a seasonal company. By the 1970s, over 80% of Conversation Heart sales happen in a 6-week window between January and February. The rest of the year, demand drops. And while Necco Wafers still sell, they're not growing. Market share is stagnant. Younger consumers aren't buying them. They're eating Skittles. They're eating Starburst. They're eating anything but chalky discs that taste like compressed sugar and dust. Necco's leadership sees the data. They know they need to diversify. So they acquire other brands, Clark Bars in 1999, Slapsticks, Banana Splits. They try launching new products. Sour Necco Wafers, chocolate Necco Wafers. None of it moves the needle. Meanwhile, the factory in Cambridge is aging. The building is over 100 years old. The equipment is outdated. Maintenance costs are climbing. And the Charles River location, once a strategic advantage, is now a liability. Cambridge has transformed into one of the most expensive real estate markets in America. Tech companies are moving in. The neighborhood is gentrifying. Necco's sprawling factory complex is sitting on land worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But Necco doesn't sell. They don't modernize. They hold on. By the early 2000s, the company is struggling. Revenue is flat, profit margins are shrinking, competition is brutal, and leadership is stuck in a cycle of nostalgia, convincing themselves that if they just hold steady, Americans will remember how much they loved Necco Wafers as kids. They're betting on the past to save the future. It won't. Boston, 2007. The Necco family finally admits what everyone already knows. They can't run the company anymore. After 106 years of private ownership, Necco is sold to American Capital, a private equity firm, for $118 million. The deal is pitched as a lifeline. American Capital promises investment, modernization, and strategic growth. They're going to save Necco. Here's what they actually do: strip it for parts. Private equity firms don't buy struggling companies to nurture them back to health. They buy them to extract value fast. American Capital's playbook is simple. Cut costs, maximize cash flow, sell it off within a few years for a profit. Immediately, they slash jobs. Over 400 workers are laid off. Production lines are consolidated. Marketing budgets are gutted. R&D gone. Innovation, not a priority. The focus is efficiency, squeezing every dollar out of operations while spending as little as possible on maintenance, upgrades, or growth. But there's one asset American Capital is salivating over: the real estate. The Cambridge factory sits on 820,000 square feet of prime land along the Charles River. In 2007, that property is worth at least $50 million. In 2012, over $100 million. Tech companies and developers are desperate to buy it. The land is more valuable than the candy business itself. So in 2009, American capital sells the property to a developer for $54.4 million. The factory that produced billions of candies for over a century, the iconic brick building that defined Necco's identity, is sold off. Necco is given 2 years to vacate. In 2011, the company moves production to a smaller facility in Revere, Massachusetts. The new factory is functional but cramped. The equipment is outdated. The move is chaotic. Production slows. Quality control suffers. Workers complain about conditions. But American capital doesn't care. They got their money from the real estate sale. The rest is just noise. By 2014, American capital is ready to exit. They sell Necco to another private equity firm, Atlantic Management, for $17.33 million. Read that again. In 2007, Necco was worth $118 million. 7 years later, it's sold for $17 million. That's an 85% drop in value. Atlantic Management promises change. They promise investment. They promise to turn Necco around. They're lying. Revere, Massachusetts, 2015. Inside the Necco Factory, something is very, very wrong. The facility in Revere is not the gleaming, state-of-the-art operation tourists imagined when they thought of America's oldest candy company. It's cramped, it's outdated, and according to workers, it's dangerous. Machines break down constantly. Conveyor belts jam. Production lines stop for hours, sometimes days. The factory is running on equipment that should have been replaced decades ago, held together with duct tape, prayers, and overworked maintenance crews. But the real problem isn't the machines. It's what's happening to the candy. In 2015, health inspectors from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health conduct a surprise inspection of the Necco Factory. What they find is horrifying. Water leaking from ceilings onto production lines. Condensation dripping directly onto unwrapped candy. Floors slick with sugar residue and grease. Pest infestations, beetles, moths, and rodents throughout the facility. Employees handling food without gloves. Equipment caked with old sugar and grime. Mold growing in corners. The inspection report is damning. Necco is issued multiple violations. The factory is deemed unsanitary. Production of certain products is temporarily halted. But here's the thing about Necco under private equity ownership. They don't care. Instead of investing in deep cleaning, equipment upgrades, and proper training, Necco does the bare minimum to pass re-inspection. They clean up the visible messes. They spray for pests. They promise to do better. Then they go right back to cutting corners. Why? Because fixing the problems, really fixing them, would require millions of dollars in capital investment, new equipment, facility upgrades, proper maintenance schedules. And Atlantic Management has no intention of spending that kind of money. They're not here to build a company. They're here to extract whatever value remains and sell it off. Meanwhile, employees are furious. Workers speak anonymously to local reporters about the conditions inside the factory. Some describe finding insects in production areas. Others talk about being pressured to work faster, to cut corners, to ignore safety protocols. But the worst part? The candy is still being produced. It's still being packaged. It's still being shipped to stores across America. And consumers have no idea? Revere 2016. The cracks are spreading. Necco's reputation is built on nostalgia, on the idea that their candy is wholesome, traditional, American. But nostalgia can't save you when your product is literally making people sick. In 2016, the FDA launches an investigation into Necco's production practices. What they discover is worse than anyone imagined. Traces of heavy metals, lead and cadmium, are found in some Necco wafer batches. Not enough to trigger an immediate recall, but enough to raise red flags. How did this happen? Old equipment, corroded machinery, lack of proper sanitation. Essentially, Necco's crumbling infrastructure is poisoning its own product. The FDA issues warnings. Necco is ordered to conduct extensive testing, implement stricter quality control, and overhaul its production process. Necco's response: they fight the FDA. Instead of acknowledging the problem and fixing it, Necco's management hires lawyers. They dispute the findings. They argue the contamination levels are within acceptable ranges. They stall. They delay. They do everything except actually solve the problem. Meanwhile, word starts spreading. Food safety blogs pick up the story. Reddit threads explode. Parents are horrified. "I've been giving these to my kids for years," one mother writes. "I thought Necco was safe." Not anymore. Sales start dropping, not catastrophically, not yet, but steadily. Retailers begin quietly reducing shelf space for Necco products. Grocery chains start questioning whether they want to stock candy from a company under FDA investigation. And Atlantic management, they realize they're sitting on a ticking time bomb. By 2017, NECCO is hemorrhaging money. Revenue is down 30%. The company is operating at a loss. The factory in Revere is a liability. The brand is damaged. The legal costs from fighting the FDA are mounting. Atlantic management decides to cut their losses. They put Necco up for sale. The asking price: $7. Revere, 2018. Necco is dying and everyone knows it. Atlantic management is desperate. They've tried selling to established candy companies: Hershey's, Mars, Ferrero. None of them are interested. Necco's brand is tarnished. The factory is a disaster. The product line is stagnant. Who wants to buy a 171-year-old company that can't even pass a health inspection? Then, in March 2018, a buyer emerges: Round Hill Investments, LLC. Nobody has heard of them. Round Hill is a tiny investment firm based in Massachusetts, led by a man named C. Dean Metropolis. On paper, he's a food industry veteran. He's been involved in turnarounds before: Pabst Blue Ribbon, Hostess brands. But Round Hill itself is barely a company. It's a holding entity with minimal capital and even less experience running a candy operation. But Necco is out of options. On May 23, 2018, the sale is finalized. Round Hill Investments buys Necco for $17.33 million. The press release is optimistic. "We're thrilled to be the stewards of these iconic American brands," Metropolis says. "Necco's products have been part of American life for over 170 years, and we're committed to honoring that legacy." Behind the scenes, chaos. Within weeks, it's clear Round Hill has no idea what they're doing. They don't have the capital to fix the factory. They don't have the expertise to manage production. They don't have relationships with suppliers or distributors. They're in over their heads. And then, in July 2018, less than 2 months after the sale, everything collapses. Round Hill announces they're closing the Revere factory. Immediately, all 230 remaining employees are laid off. Production stops. The machines go silent. The reason? Round Hill claims they need to restructure operations and find a more suitable production facility. Translation: they're broke, they're panicking, and they have no plan. For the first time in 171 years, Necco is not producing candy. Revere, August 2018. The factory is empty. The machines that once produced 4 billion wafers a year are sitting idle. The production lines are covered in dust. The offices are abandoned. And in the parking lot, auction signs are going up. Round Hill Investments has declared bankruptcy. They're liquidating everything: equipment, inventory, intellectual property, even the Necco brand itself. The entire company is being sold off piece by piece. On August 28, 2018, the auction begins. Bidders walk through the factory like vultures picking at a carcass. industrial equipment dealers eyeing the conveyor belts, scrap metal companies calculating the value of the machinery, brand consultants assessing which trademarks are worth salvaging. The iconic Necco brand, Conversation Hearts, Necco Wafers, Clark Bars, is sold to Spangler Candy Company for $18.83 million. Spangler, best known for Dum Dum's lollipops, promises to restart production. But there's a catch. They don't plan to manufacture in Massachusetts. They're moving production to Ohio. The equipment is sold separately. Mixers, ovens, packaging machines, gone. Some of it goes to other candy manufacturers, some of it goes to scrap yards. The rest is left to rust. And the employees? The 230 workers who lost their jobs in July. They're left with nothing. No severance, no health insurance, no pensions, just a letter thanking them for their service and wishing them well. By September 2018, the Revere factory is completely gutted. The building sits empty. Windows are broken. Weeds grow through cracks in the parking lot. A "For Lease" sign hangs out front, weathered and faded. For 171 years, Necco survived. Through the Civil War, through 2 world wars, through the Great Depression, through technological revolutions and cultural shifts. It took 3 private equity firms less than 11 years to destroy it. So how does an unbeatable giant fall this hard? The answer isn't complicated. It's actually brutally simple. Necco stopped innovating, and then private equity finished the job. Let's be clear. Necco's decline didn't start in 2007, when American capital bought the company. The warning signs were there decades earlier. By the 1970s, NECCO was already losing ground to competitors. By the 1990s, they were coasting on brand recognition alone. By the 2000s, they were desperate. But here's where private equity turned a struggling company into a corpse. When American capital bought Necco in 2007, they saw one thing: real estate. The Cambridge factory was worth more than the entire candy operation, so they sold it. They pocketed $54 million and moved production to a cheaper facility in Revere. That was the fatal decision. Moving the factory wasn't just a logistical nightmare. It destroyed Necco's operational foundation. The Cambridge facility was old, yes, but it was functional. It had decades of institutional knowledge built into its systems. Workers knew the equipment, processes were refined, production ran smoothly. The Revere factory? It was cramped, poorly maintained, and inadequate for Necco's production needs. Equipment broke down constantly. Quality control suffered. Costs skyrocketed. And Atlantic Management, who bought Necco in 2014, refused to invest in upgrades. Why? Because they were never planning to keep Necco long-term. They were planning to extract value and flip it. That's the private equity playbook. Buy low, cut costs, maximize short-term cash flow, sell high. If the company survives, great. If it doesn't, not their problem. Necco was a perfect target, a struggling brand with valuable assets and minimal debt. American capital squeezed out the real estate value. Atlantic Management squeezed out whatever operational value remained. And when Round Hill bought the company in 2018, there was nothing left to squeeze. Round Hill lasted 56 days before filing for bankruptcy. From $118 million in 2007 to liquidation in 2018. 11 years. 3 private equity owners. 1 dead company. Necco's collapse holds lessons that extend far beyond candy. Let's break them down. Lesson 1. Legacy is not a business strategy. Necco spent decades coasting on nostalgia. They believed their 171-year history was enough to sustain them. It wasn't. Consumers don't care how old your brand is if your product is boring, outdated, and hasn't evolved in 50 years. While Necco was relying on tradition, competitors were innovating. Mars was launching new products every year. Hershey's was expanding into premium chocolate. Even smaller brands like Sour Patch Kids and Swedish Fish were capturing market share with bold flavors and aggressive marketing. Necco's response: make the same chalky wafers they'd been making since 1847. Legacy can open doors, but it can't keep them open. Lesson 2. Private equity is not your friend. Private equity firms are not in the business of saving companies. They're in the business of extracting value. When American capital bought Necco, they didn't invest in growth, innovation, or modernization. They sold the real estate, cut costs, and flipped the company for a quick profit. Atlantic Management did the same. Round Hill tried to do the same but failed spectacularly. Necco wasn't killed by changing consumer tastes or increased competition. It was killed by financial engineering. 3 private equity firms systematically hollowed out the company, stripped its assets, and left nothing but a shell. That's not a turnaround, that's looting. Lesson 3. Cutting corners kills. When Necco moved to Revere, management chose the cheapest facility possible. They deferred maintenance. They ignored safety violations. They fought the FDA instead of fixing contamination issues. Why? Because Atlantic Management prioritized short-term profits over long-term sustainability. The result? A factory that produced contaminated candy, failed health inspections, and destroyed consumer trust. Once word got out that Necco Wafers might contain heavy metals, the brand was finished. No amount of nostalgia could save them. Cutting corners doesn't save money, it destroys value. Lesson 4. Timing matters. Round Hill bought Necco in May 2018 and filed for bankruptcy in July 2018. 56 days. That's not a turnaround attempt, that's a miscalculation. Round Hill didn't have the capital, expertise, or plan to run Necco. They bought a dying company with borrowed money, hoping to flip it quickly. When they couldn't find a buyer, they collapsed. Timing matters. If you're buying a distressed asset, you better have the resources and runway to fix it. Round Hill had neither. Revere, Massachusetts. Today, if you drive down American Legion Highway, you'll pass a large empty building with broken windows and a faded "for lease" sign. This is the former Necco Factory. The place that once produced 4 billion wafers a year sits silent. Weeds grow through cracks in the parking lot. The loading docks are empty. The machines are gone. In 2019, Spangler Candy Company, the new owner of the Necco brand, restarted production of Conversation Hearts and Necco Wafers. But not in Massachusetts, in Ohio. And the product isn't the same. The recipe changed. The texture is different. Longtime fans complain that the new hearts taste wrong. Because they're not Necco hearts, they're Spangler hearts with a Necco label. The original Necco, the company founded in 1847, the factory that survived wars and depressions, the brand that defined American candy for over a century, is gone. Forever. From Oliver Chase's hand-cranked lozenge cutter to 4 billion wafers a year. From 2,400 employees to liquidation. From 171 years of history to 56 days of bankruptcy. All that's left is silence. The market doesn't care about your legacy. It doesn't care how long you've been around or how beloved your product once was. It cares about innovation, quality, and trust. Necco lost all 3. Adapt or die. Innovate or disappear. Protect your core or watch private equity strip it for parts. Welcome to the Necco Factory, where America's sweetest empire was built, sustained for 171 years, and destroyed in 90 days.